What's up, everybody? Wolf from Walmart. We're back. We're back, baby, again.
Not a bad fish right there, guys.
No.
Out here catching Folsom bass right now, dude. Woo, he's a little chunker. What up, what up, what up? Tis I, Dave Erkey, again, the host of the Whole Angler podcast. I'm back again. Yes, you guys haven't got rid of me yet. It's only episode 7. I'm still new to this. I started the whole video and I forgot to hit record, and it was, yeah, it has been one blunder after the next this whole evening on my end. I feel terrible for my guest because she's going to come on and be like, this guy's a train wreck. So I really... And then all the guys just got home, so all the bikes are pulling down the street right now. I hope you guys heard that on the audio. It is going to be a fun night, I swear to God. So poor Samantha Brophy, she is going to be my guest tonight, and we are going to discuss everything under the sun. And when I say poor, it's only because she has to talk to me. She is a rad person, and I can't wait to get this interview started. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her in. Welcome to the Whole Angler, Samantha. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
Just, one crisis after the next, from babies pooping in tubs to guys blowing down the street in their Harleys,
It happens. I see it all the time at work.
So, yeah. Oh, let's talk about your work real quick. So what exactly are you doing right now?
So right now I'm in my 4th year of medical school. I'm in the last few months of it. I graduate in May finally. So I'm mostly just doing, thank you. I'm mostly just doing rotations in different hospitals, and different, mostly emergency departments, which is going to be the specialty I'm going into. But I'm also rotating through like hyperbaric medicine, which is dive medicine, sports medicine, internal medicine, and a bunch of other different random wilderness medicine was one of them too.
Did you say dive medicine?
Yeah, so hyperbaric medicine, where you work with like a hyperbaric chamber, you treat dive injuries, any other injuries that might require like a hyperbaric chamber.
Oh, like when you get the bends from like coming
Yeah,
up too fast. Oh,
exactly.
oh,
Yeah,
dude. Okay, well, we're gonna get there, but let's start at like somewhere around, say, the beginning. Like, so you were born.
I was born. Yeah, I don't remember much of it, and here we are now.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I was born. My parents raised me. My grandparents moved here from San Francisco to help raise my brother and I. I was a little troublemaker, threw tantrums as a little kid, and then when I got to high school, I made more trouble, as teenagers do.
Yeah.
I was a little wild, but eventually I went to college and grew up. Got my life together, worked a bunch of jobs. I worked in neurodegenerative disease research for a few years, did some research with cephalopods like octopuses and squids, and then eventually made my way to medical school.
There's a lot to unpack. All right. First off, you said cephalopod research with neurodegenerative disease. Like, is it something in their brain?
Two separate. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was like,
I should have specified that. I did cephalopod research. So I did behavioral research with squids, and then with octopuses and squids, we did some neurological studies where we kind of tested different anesthesias to see if they were actually anesthetics or just paralytics. Because currently in the United States, at least currently at the time of that publication, there were no regulations for how to work with cephalopods in research, like humane ways. Like, like if you work with a human, there's humane ways to like do studies on them. There was none of that for cephalopods in the States. So we basically did all this research to decide which anesthetic would be the best for their future recommendations, I guess.
Oh, so you guys actually like tested their biology, like their biological makeup, to find out what their nerves responded to better than others, or
Yeah, we basically
don't poke them with a hot stick. What are we talking about?
Yeah, we basically we anesthetized them and then hooked up like a little electrode basically to their nerves. And then as we slowly brought them back out of anesthesia, we could test and make sure that everything was working right, get a baseline, and then we put them back under the anesthesia that we were testing that day, and we basically keep poking them to see when we lost response, or did we continue to get like a nerve response, or and they're just paralyzed, or are they both paralyzed and they can't feel, or did we just numb them basically and they're still moving around trying to get that electrode out.
That's okay. I'm sorry to say, if anybody wants to like play Save the Octopus on me, I'm sorry, but like that's really interesting to me. So, like, did you find in your research, or did you find in the testing that you guys were doing, like there were certain things that would actually numb them out, but they would still be awake, and or vice versa, like
Yeah,
where they were completely asleep but they could feel?
yeah, we tried a bunch. I think we tried everything from like ether. It's been so many years, so I apologize. I don't want to butcher my own research, but
No, okay.
we tried all these different anesthesias, and some of them we were like, oh wow, they're paralyzed, but we're still getting a nerve response. And so basically the whole point of it, even though it's, terrible for the subjects that we studied, was to, essentially say like, hey, while there's no current regulations, we can now recommend safely what would be best to use for them. So it causes them the least stress and the least pain and actually works as both an anesthetic and a paralytic.
Oh, that's really cool. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I have a feeling I'm going to be really interested in a lot of stuff that you talk about tonight, because I'm I'm already hooked. Let's start at teenage years, being a dirtbag teenager. I was a dirtbag teenager. I was POS. I mean, I wasn't quite burned the school down, but I was, you know, borderline getting ready to be nuts at parties and that kind of guy. So, I
Yeah.
mean, what got you into like where you're at now? Like, how did you make that flip? Like, I'm gonna be crazy, and then one day you're like, you know what, I'm really interested in. Let's take a look at these octopus, and like let's do all these research papers. Like, was it something that happened in school? Was it a person that you met, or like how did that work?
Yeah. I think I just had a lot of anger as a kid. And I've spent obviously a lot of time as an adult and as a teenager in therapy working all that out, where that anger came from. But, that kind of just exploded into, wow, I'm a teenager and I have autonomy somehow. And I don't know where that came from, but I can do whatever I want. And I did whatever I want. Um, and I think that while I got myself into a lot of trouble often, and I did a lot of things that were maybe not the best for myself, I think it gave me a lot of insight into like the person I wanted to be. And ultimately, like there was a question of what am I going to do with my life? There's nothing I really want to do. I'm not even going to go to college. And then I was taking an AP biology class, and I was like really inspired by my teacher, Dr. Warren. I think he's a doctor. Dr. Warren. Professor Warren? Or
He's a
whatever.
doctor for all intents and
Teacher
purposes,
Warren.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Teacher Warren.
he was my AP biology teacher, and, he did all these fun experiments, and he really taught the class in a way where I was like, "Wow, this is maybe the first thing that I've actually thought was really interesting." And so, with my very low high school GPA, I applied to some colleges, got in, decided to study biology, um, and that kind of like got me started on my path. I immediately got a job when I moved to San Francisco for school. And then I got a second job, and then I got a third job. And so I was just working all the time. And then I got joined these clubs and joined this club. And, I still had a little bit of that dirtbag partier left in me. And I was trying to juggle, being a degenerate with being a responsible human. And
Hell yeah.
um, ultimately, I think I saw a big split, as a kid, you see all the kids around you who are partying, they're the cool kids, and, you're one of them, and then one day you see this, like, split, and all of a sudden you have all these responsibilities, and you're saying, "No, I can't come out tonight, I have to work in the morning," or, "I've got this big test to study for," and it kind of goes in these 2 paths, and I saw a lot of my friends get kind of stuck down this path of I can do this for the rest of my life. I don't have to ever have responsibilities. And while it looked fun and great from the outside, I was like, oh man, but like, don't you have anything driving you? And I realized that probably for the first time, I had something that was like driving me. I had a goal, I had an aspiration. Um,
That's awesome. I'm sorry.
yeah,
That's awesome. I was one of those kids that did not have goals or aspirations. So
yeah,
like to hear that coming from somebody at that young of an age, like that's I didn't have my goals and aspirations to well, I'm 42. I still don't really have very many goals and aspirations. But that's really awesome. So you got into biology, you got into San Francisco, right? Now
hmm
was it I don't understand, like I said, I was one of those kids. When you say biology, is it like like the entire ecosystem, or did you focus on anything particular, or was it just kind of, is that how they teach it? I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, basically the basic biology degree is, everything. So like plants, animals, humans, and then you kind of focus more on your specialties. Like I specialized in human physiology. And so we did more anatomy classes. And the goal was ultimately to go to medical school, which kind of came about. I started volunteering at Highland Hospital in Oakland. I don't know if you know anything about it. It's a county hospital. Um,
Oh, the county hospital in Oakland?
Yeah, so I spent a
You
few years
lived.
there. Yeah,
Holy
yeah,
shit. I'm sorry.
yeah,
That's gnarly. You probably saw some of the craziest stuff in there. So
yeah.
were you like, okay, I've been in many ERs in places like Oakland. And were you the person that came in and like started poking me and asking me questions, or were you the person that stood next to them and poked, and while they poked me and asked me questions?
I was neither. So as a volunteer, we in the emergency department, you were, like, very involved, but, like, not directly. So, like, we didn't go greet the patients or any like, bring them back and triage them, but we were there in the trauma rooms hands-on, which was, like, looking back, kind of crazy. Excuse me, sorry, I'm still a little sick.
It's all good. It's going around.
Um
So, okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. You are literally in a volunteer position for, is it college credit? Yes, no, no. You're just in a volunteer position to learn. So
Yep.
you went into the county hospital at Oakland. Please, is there anything in there that you saw that just stands out in your memory? Like,
Absolutely. Give me a second to eat this cough drop.
yeah, no, no, no. Do your thing. It is going around. I'm one of those people. Everyone in my house will get it, and I will not. And I will gloat about it for like a month, and then it all hits me at once like a train wreck, and I'm just down for 2 days, and then everybody points and laughs. So,
Yeah, I haven't been sick in a very long time. And now I've been sick for like a week and a half and it's killing me. I'm so bored.
oh god, yeah,
Um, but yeah, so we were like in the trauma rooms, traumas come in, you're there helping the nurses, whether it's holding a patient down, because obviously they're in pain. Sometimes, they're like in a lot of pain, they're flailing, and you're like, we need to get them like comfortable.
yeah.
We need to get this IV in, whatever they have to do.
Mhm.
Cataloging their belongings. They even had us doing CPR, which is like kind of insane.
Wait, wow, just all right. Hey, uh, I don't even know how to say that. Just do the CPR on this person until we can get the paddles in here or something like that to like get them moving again.
Yeah, well, so CPR is like it's such a long and I don't know if you've ever done CPR, but it's like very taxing,
Yep, yep,
And so
yep,
you try to kind of have like a line of people in the hospital. So one person does CPR, and when they call for a pulse check, you hop out. The next person in line hops in, ready to go once the pulse check comes back. And so
yep.
that way you've got like a constant like cycle of people who are never getting too tired, and volunteers were just part of that.
Whoa, dude, that's so crazy. Like, okay, my experience with CPR is yes, I've had to do it. It is gnarly. You have so much adrenaline and you're just pumping so hard because it's not like, okay, I'm just gonna bounce on this chest with these two hands and just
Mhm.
like, you gotta break a rib. Like you gotta really get in there and you gotta
Yep.
pump, pump, pump. And it's like all adrenaline. And then if you step off for a minute, it's like this huge flush where you yourself are like, I need to sit. I need to sit right
Yeah.
now. Because you
Yeah.
you have this whole like, oh, I'm trying to save this person, or trying to help. So, all right. So, what stands out to you, Oakland community?
Um, I think one of the things I loved most about that community in Highland Hospital is everybody was kind of treated equally. So no matter who came in, what the reason you came in for, it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
As kind of cold as that seems to say, you were just another patient, and the goal was to stabilize you for further treatment. You come in with a gunshot wound, half your face ripped off, dogfight, whatever, and it's like there's no like, oh, but like, did he do drugs, or like, did he cause this fight, or like, it was just like,
y-
hey, stabilize the patient, get him moved on.
Yep. That-
And I think that was just like so inspiring to me. And that's kind of like what got me started on my road to medicine. But most the thing that most stands out is obviously the first time I did CPR on a patient. He didn't survive. Excuse me. And it was kind of the first time, like, I lost a lot of friends in my childhood due to their degeneracies or whatever. And
Same.
it was the
Same.
first time I was like directly faced with, oh, we were just caring for this patient and now they're just dead, and now we have to just go tell their family. And it was just kind of like a really sobering moment. Everybody steps back and they take a moment of silence, and then they have to move on, and there's another patient who needs help.
Yeah. I mean, that's that kind of situation. Sobering is a good word for it, but I would almost say like it's like a core memory, like it burns itself into your mind like forever. Like it's just
Mhm.
because there's like an emotional value attached to that, and then all of a sudden the absence of a being, like they were there, and then now they're not, and it's just something that just it scores in the back of your mind forever. Now, do they have the volunteers doing all of this? Like, do you have to be the one to be like, hey guys, so we tried and it didn't work out, it was a little too late? Or did they actually have, like, was that like the doctor, like that was the job of the active nurse or whatever at the time?
What up, dudes and dudettes? I'm sure you're tired of hearing my voice by now, but you're going to hear it for a little bit longer because this is a shout out to the sponsor of this show, Kayak City. Kayak City has been taking care of me ever since I started getting into a boat and paddling around in the water trying to catch some fish. And when I tell you it is Kayak City, it is literally like a city of kayaks. They have Bonafide, Eddy Line, Feel Free, Hobie, Jackson, Native, New Canoe, Old Town, Wilderness Systems, and so many used kayaks. I stopped trying to count them a long time ago. If you guys are looking for accessories, they have walls and walls and walls of accessories. They have one wall dedicated specifically to Yak Attack, and it is a massive wall. Kayak City is your #1 Yak Attack dealer here in Northern California. If you want to know where it is, stop by at 7812 Auburn Boulevard, Citrus Heights, CA. Roll through, say what up to James, Troy, Eric, Scott. Tell them Dave says what's up, and tell them I sent you there. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Handle it. See, I would hope that they wouldn't have volunteers going out there like asking or telling people, like breaking the bad news. Like I feel like that would be like a horrible experience for someone.
Wow. Sorry, I'm just dying over here all of a sudden.
Dude, it's all good. I have that effect on people. It's totally fine.
No, we could be there to offer. We didn't like go give the bad news, but we would often be there to like offer support to the family members. So like, like after they received the news and the doctors may have moved on. Wow, sorry. um we would go and we would, is there anything else we can do for you? Do you need water? Do you need us to call somebody for you? Do you need a blanket or anything like that? So we were kind of more of like a support system for both the nurses, the doctors, and the patients.
Yeah, I can imagine them nurses and doctors need that. Like, you can't just go do that stuff every day as your 9 to 5 job. Well, I think it's like 12 to 12. Like, ER hours are nuts. And then just be normal. Like, you just can't. Like, so you guys are there for both sides. That's pretty rad. You were talking about or you and I were talking about in the green room that you did a little bit of fly fishing. Where does that fit in here?
Yeah.
Was that before or after or during Oakland?
That was during. So
Okay.
I grew up fishing with my dad, just spinning gear, regular stuff.
They call it the conventional tackle. Fly anglers call it. Yeah.
If I can get through without coughing to death. Sorry.
It's all good. I'm just going to make up a story right now, and then you can correct me on all of it. So you guys went to the movies to go see A River Runs Through It, and you guys are like, you know what? This is probably the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Brad Pitt looks so good in this movie, and now we're going to go throw flies at rivers until they start biting.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. I don't even. Why do you have me on the show for? Just tell my story.
No, let's hear it. Let's hear it for real.
And I loved it. And I think one of the hardest things for me about moving to San Francisco was there wasn't really like a big outdoors community, at least that I had encountered there.
Yeah.
And my dad grew up in San Francisco. That's where he's from. And he had heard of this fishing club in San Francisco, in Golden Gate Park, called the Golden Gate Angling Casting Club. We had no idea that it was all fly fishing. But for Christmas, he gifted me a membership. Went with me to the first meeting, and that's just how I got started in fly fishing. I had never done it before. I'd never even like heard of it really. I was just kind of like, cool, a bunch of people that fish, and it was just this like beautiful lodge. I don't know if you've ever heard of the club. One second.
Yeah. Handle it. See, I would hope that they wouldn't have volunteers going out there like asking or telling people like breaking the bad news. Like I feel like that would be like a horrible experience for someone.
Wow. Sorry, I'm just dying over here all of a sudden.
Dude, it's all good. I have that effect on people. It's totally fine.
No, we could be there to offer. We didn't like go give the bad news, but we would often be there to like offer support to the family members. So like, like after they received the news and the doctors may have moved on. Wow, sorry. um we would go and we would, is there anything else we can do for you? Do you need water? Do you need us to call somebody for you? Do you need a blanket or anything like that? So we were kind of more of like a support system for both the nurses, the doctors, and the patients.
Yeah, I can imagine them nurses and doctors need that. Like you can't just go do that stuff every day as your 9 to 5 job. Well, I think it's like 12 to 12. Like ER hours are nuts. And then just be normal. Like you just can't. Like so you guys are there for both sides. That's pretty rad. You were talking about or you and I were talking about in the green room that you did a little bit of fly fishing. Where does that fit in here?
Yeah.
Was that before or after or during Oakland?
That was during. So
Okay.
I grew up fishing with my dad, just spinning gear, regular stuff.
They call it the conventional tackle. Fly anglers call it.
Yeah. I can get through without coughing to death. Sorry.
It's all good. I'm just gonna make up a story right now, and then you can correct me on all of it. So you guys went to the movies to go see A River Runs Through It, and you guys are like, you know what? This is probably the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Brad Pitt looks so good in this movie, and now we're gonna go throw flies at rivers until they start biting.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. I don't even. Why do you have me on the show for? Just tell my story.
No, let's hear it. Let's hear it for real.
And I loved it. And I think one of the hardest things for me about moving to San Francisco was there wasn't really like a big outdoors community, at least that I had encountered there.
Yeah.
And my dad grew up in San Francisco. That's where he's from. And he had heard of this fishing club in San Francisco in Golden Gate Park called the Golden Gate Angling Casting Club. We had no idea that it was all fly fishing. But for Christmas, he gifted me a membership. Went with me to the first meeting. And that's just how I got started in fly fishing. I had never done it before. I'd never even like heard of it really. I was just kind of like, cool, a bunch of people that fish. And it was just this like beautiful lodge. I don't know if you've ever heard of the club.
I've heard of the club, but I've never been up that way to fish. So it's definitely I've heard of it, but I've never done it. I did go some fly fishing on like the Snake River in Ohio, or not in Ohio, Idaho, and then I've tried it out here. I just catch a bunch of trees myself. So, but continue, keep going. So you're part of this club now, and you just do they like take you under their wing, or is it more along the lines of they just kind of, all right, chick, like figure it out, and we're gonna be over here catching tanks.
Yeah, I got super lucky. The guys there, my whole heart. They're like my second family. I love them so much. When I got started, I just kind of like started going to events and hanging around. And I was like, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, a bunch of guys just kind of like took me under their wing. They showed me how to cast. Taught me pretty much everything I know. Took me out on trips. Took me out fly fishing. Ultimately, I met Henry Little, who is, I believe, still the head of the Project Healing Waters chapter in San Francisco. And so I started volunteering with them. And what they are is they're a group that provides, free fly fishing for veterans, disabled veterans. So they teach them how to fly fish, how to tie flies, how to build fly rods. They take them out on trips and do everything with them. And it's all free, no cost to the veterans. And it's purely just, kind of, it's like a rehabilitation basically.
Dude, that's awesome. Awesome. How was your time there? Were you out there like fishing with them? Were you like, hey, you need to throw this fly? This is why?
We would often hire guides.
Mhm.
So that way they'd have like the best experience,
Yeah.
So we'd plan the trips. We'd take them to these beautiful waters. And then we'd have guides who would take them out and be like, I'm so sorry.
Dude, no, don't apologize. You're sick. Don't feel terrible.
This is like the most I've coughed all day, so I don't know what's going on.
I told you I have that effect on people. Just it's okay if you feel like death. Chances are that means you've met me at some point.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, so we would just take these guys out. The guys would say, put this fly on, put it right there. And they'd catch the most magnificent browns. I mean, just like trophy browns on the McCloud River. It was unreal.
That's awesome. So, and you were there to help out, or you were just fishing too? You're like, hey, I'm gonna get a couple more over here while we're all out here. I'm just gonna.
A little bit of both. So I helped a lot in the beginning with like the setup.
Yeah.
Like finding donors.
It's all good, dude.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Finding donors, like helping teaching how to cast.
Yeah.
Setting up events and things like that. I was just kind of like there by proxy. The guys who have been fishing for years were more of like we know exactly what we're doing and we're teaching it. And I was like the assistant to the teacher.
Oh, that's awesome. So did you actually get to have conversations with the veterans, or were you just kind of, oh, that's cool. That's cool. Were they just like blown away you were there? Were they like, what are you doing here? You're like, I'm here to help.
Yep. That was pretty much the entire like vibe towards me at the club when I first joined. They were like, don't you have like friends? Why are you here hanging out with like 60-year-old dudes? Like it's a Saturday.
Yeah.
What?
But like you're saying, like this is after like post derelict behavior, you have a goal and a drive now. So
yep. And it was kind of like almost like a snowball effect into all the other outdoor hobbies that I have, and just like my love and respect for the outdoors, like at a time when I was like feeling alone, like I wanted to be, I felt a need for something more than just like this city life and going out partying with my friends and all that. I had fly fishing, and that kind of snowballed me into everything else.
Yeah, and we were talking about a little bit. Let's get into some of these hobbies because I'm interested. Did you say you're into backpacking and hiking, or are you talking like backpack? Like you put it all in a backpack and you're out there, like everything.
Oh yeah. So I actually from there started working at REI.
Solid. That's a win all day.
Yeah, it was actually
CPR
a very
REI. That's rad. And then you get all the
a really funny story.
Oh, is there?
I was working in neurodegenerative disease research. So I was working with like ALS and Huntington's disease at the time. I'd graduated college, working full time, and I just walked into REI and I was complaining to one of the salespeople about the prices, and he was like, "Well, why don't you get a job here?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, like I've got time for that." Went out drinking with some of my colleagues, applied online, forgot about it, get a call back from them, and they're like, "Hey, we want to interview." And I was like, "For what?" And they're like, "For the job you applied for." And I was like, "Sure, sounds like me." So I went in and they were like, "Why are you here? You have a job." And I was like, I like the outdoors."
Let me get a couple days a week, dude. Like
and they were like,
week, man.
"Yeah." And they were like, "Okay, sure, you can work here, I guess." And I was like, "Nice."
You got the job because you went to the bar with your friends and just was like, hey, you know what? I should apply. You know what? I'm going to do it right now.
And the guy who actually told me to apply is now one of my good friends. I actually just officiated his wedding a few months back.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're still really good friends, but that like snowballed me, once I had all that access to the gear at such a great price.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden I went backpacking, and then I was going mountaineering, and then I was going skiing. And then I was rock climbing, and it was just like one thing after the other after the other. And then now I'm scuba diving for lobsters, and it's just like, I don't know how I got here.
Okay, if there's ever some sort of apocalypse, I'm coming to your house because you know what to do. Because I don't. I did survival camp because I was a bad kid and I had to go learn how to survive in the woods, and it was a terrible experience. But I'm coming to your house because at least I know that I will live or have a better chance of living, because that is a lot of outdoors for sure. Now, you said you scuba dive for lobsters?
It was my first time, but I plan to make it a habit. Um, went
Don't
down
you
to
have to go
Santa
to like all
Barbara.
the classes for the scuba stuff?
Oh
Dude,
yeah, yeah, it's super easy. Yeah.
I'm sorry. If it was super easy, everyone would have a scuba license or something, right?
They should. It's a lifetime certification. It takes 1 weekend,
What?
Saturday, Sunday, and it's like a few $100s, and you're scuba certified. And then you can go anywhere in the world and scuba dive.
Okay, I'm gonna look this up when we get out of here because that sounds really awesome. Not gonna lie,
Oh
but
yeah.
might be a good Christmas gift, because that sounds awesome. Now, you said you were in neurodegenerative disease research.
Mhm.
Can we talk about that? Because I'm like I'm a fiend. We have a mutual friend, our buddy Curtis. And I got Curtis on this guy too, Andrew Huberman. I like study his podcast. Like, it's one of those things where I'll listen to it twice for sure. Like, I really get into how the brain works. I'm really into just how all brains work. So, like, we have a dog. We got a dog. I don't like the dog that much, but he's a really good dog. I just don't like him. But I'm trying to learn how to like train him better. And I'm going to tell you right now, he's a husky. So I think it's a
Mm.
lost cause, but I'm going to go for it anyways.
I'm sure
And
Huskies train you.
yeah, I'm not into that. No, that's not gonna happen. He trains my wife real well though. But I want to know, like, so I've been like deep diving in like husky mentalities, like husky behaviors and like all these kind of things, because I don't want to go, oh, let him walk this far and then stop and wait for him to return to you before you keep going with the walk. I'm like, I'm not into that. Like, I need to learn how this dog's brain works. Like, I'm really into how brain works, so I can kind of connect with him better or figure out, how to work with him better. So when it comes to people, when people are talking to me about stuff like that, I'm like, how'd you get to that thought process? Like, what brought you to that point? So I would really love to dive down this whole neuro uh sorry, excuse me, hold on, I'm gonna mute. You just go ahead and start firing away. Of
See,
course I
look, I
couldn't.
gave it to you.
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. I cough, you cough.
Yeah, so this neurodegenerative research, like, let's dive into this really real quick, just because I find it super interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's necessarily the same as like the Huberman podcast stuff where they kind of talk about like neurobehavioral stuff.
No, that's not what I'm looking for.
Like neurobiology as much, but
I have that all the time. I want to
basically
hear this. Yeah.
we worked with stem cells from real people, and we engineered them basically into neurons. We grew neurons from stem cells.
What?
And we did a bunch of research on it. So we tested like neuron length, neuron survivability, and a bunch of other different like studies that we could do. And basically, the goal of it was to kind of identify a specific genetic marker that was like kind of causing early neuronal death in patients with like Huntington's and ALS. And to kind of like figure out if we could create like a drug that could target those genetic markers.
And what does Huntington's do to you?
It's like a movement disorder. So your neurons kind of it. My gosh, excuse me. Your
Okay.
neurons just kind of aren't working correctly, and so you get like the typical chorea, what they call chorea movements. So like the really jerky movements, they call them like dancing patients. And so you get these like uncontrollable movements. Your excitable neurons are like firing more and more and more in like improper ways, and so you have movements that like you can't really control.
Okay. So now we're going to dig in a little bit, because I also have, you know, a 1.5-year-old, and when she was a little baby, she still does it every now and then, but I'll just see her do like the whole little like little kick twitch or whatever like that for no reason. And I'm like, in my brain, what I'm seeing, at least from my layman's perspective, is I'm seeing some sort of neural connection happen in her head that hasn't happened before. And so she gets this little neat twitch, like when you watch little people and you watch them learn and you watch them physically like learn to walk and physically learn to use their hands and stuff like that, you can actually see, like, you don't visibly see the connection in their head, but like you can see how their brain's working to make that connection happen, to grip tighter, to let go, like all these kinds of things. So is that kind of what you're talking about? Only it kind of happens later on in life where the neurons die, and so it's kind of like a like misconnection here and there.
Yeah. So
Layman's terms, sorry.
in layman's terms, you basically have these things like neurotransmitters, and one of them is like epinephrine, right?
Yes.
So like adrenaline.
Mhm.
And so some of them are excitatory. They basically cause the nerves to like react.
Mhm.
And so they excite the movement, right? And then you have the inhibitory ones that stop the movement.
Mhm.
In Huntington's disease, you basically have the nerves that break down over time, and they're like dying kind of progressively. But for whatever reason, it causes like more excitatory things. So like you'll have clumsiness, like difficulty walking, you'll have those chorea movements and things like that. And so for kids, like for everybody, like you can just have, like little muscle twitches and things like that. And that could just be like a little neuron just going, oh, gotta flick out your elbow, like you're learning these movements, your body's learning with you, especially as a kid, you're growing and all those
Huh. And so, and when you're saying they
things.
got stem cells, are we getting stem cells from, like, is it like the oh, what's it called? It's the fluid, amniotic fluid. Is that where the stem cells come from, or is it like, can you get them from people who are like donors, or like how does that work?
My understanding, and I'm by no means an expert in this topic, and it has once again been like almost 8 or 9 years since I did this research. My understanding is they like reverse engineered. So they take cells from patients and they like reverse engineer them into stem cells. And then we can then essentially coax them into becoming neurons.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I really want to dive deep in this, but it'll be a rabbit hole that I'll be asking the dumbest questions for so long. So
No question is a dumb question.
you haven't known me that long. But we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna jump. So you got into this while you're still fly fishing, you're being outdoors, you're doing all this kind of stuff, you're scuba diving, and you got in, and now this has directed you towards like ER medicine now, or how? That's because I mean you gave us the whole story right in the beginning, so I'm just kind of chopping it up a little.
Yeah. So I was actually originally interested in neurology.
Okay.
And then from there, I volunteered at Highland Hospital, and I was kind of split. I was like, what do I want to do? And I was leaning a little bit more towards emergency medicine. And then I was doing this neurology research basically. And I was like, you know what? Neurology is not for me. And that was a little biased because I think that the environment of really academic research like that is a little bit unhealthy. There were a lot of things that I didn't really love about that. And so that kind of pushed me away from research and away from neurology in general.
Hmm. So is it, at this point you're doing the outdoors for your personal health and well-being and like enjoyment. You call it hobbyists. For me, I just call it breaks. Like I need a break from my life. Like I need to go do something, be out in nature, like be away from everything for a little bit and like kind of get that mental, emotional reset. At least I do. Is that what you were doing at the time when you're like, all right, I've been diving pretty deep into this and it's starting to get unhealthy. I'm going to take off of my backpack for a couple weeks, or how does that work? Like,
I definitely tried.
I'm asking you, how do you balance your life? Because I have no
Yeah.
balance.
I have a very, very hard time with balance. I feel like I'm very all or nothing, like ski season comes around. I'm like, all I want to do every day is ski. And then I forget that I should probably also go to the gym and lift weights or like go for runs and do cardio. Or, I get really focused on what I'm doing at work. And then I get off work and I'm like, oh, I got to prepare for the next day. And, I forget I forget to take care of myself, as I feel like a lot of people do. It was especially hard during this time because I was working every single day. We didn't get days off. Every day the cells we're working on need to be taken care of. So you have to feed cells
How do you feed cells?
with a pipette. So you put basically like solution on top of, like, they're plated on this little plate. You put solution on top of it, you like feed them. And then you have to like split the cells. Like, oh, they're growing too fast. You don't want them to like all take over this plate and die. So you got to split the cells. So it was just like every day with the process. I missed holidays, I missed birthdays, everything. Give me-
You like forgot it's your birthday and stuff. Oh man, that's a rough one.
Yeah, so you're spending just like every day in this like room working with these cells. Nobody's around you. It's a sterile environment. You've got nothing with you. You don't get to play on your phone. It's just like you, your headphones, and your cells, like pipetting, pipetting, pipetting.
Yeah.
Which was super unhealthy. And I would try to take time off work, and I'd get a lot of flack for that. They'd be like, "Well, you can't take time off work. Like, you need to stay here. Like, we don't have anybody to cover for you." I'm like,
What?
"Got somebody to cover for me."
You're all, yo, I also work at REI. Y'all need to chill. Like, I have another job.
Yeah. So that was a tough time. I've definitely found a little bit more balance as I've gotten older and as I've gotten like further along in my career, but I try not to think of it so much for me as like a coping mechanism, like, oh, I got to get away from my life and get to the thing I love. I try to think of it, and that's kind of why I consider it more as like, oh, a hobbyist, like I love my job, I love my career. And I also love the things I do outdoors. And I just kind of try to look at every day as, oh, I get to go to work and do this thing I love. And then when I'm off, I maybe get to go to the gym and rock climb and do this other thing I love. Rather than like escaping from one thing to the next, I'm just kind of trying to find joy in everything that I'm doing.
Dude, that's a way better healthy. That's a way healthier mentality than I have. I love that. That's super cool. Okay. I don't know how I get questions in my head, and if I ask them, I've been told that I paint with a very broad brush because I don't know how to ask questions properly. So bear with me when I ask you this question. All right. When you found that this was too much, like, or not too much, it was too extreme for you in the growing the cells, all the stem cells and all that kind of stuff. When it got to be too much, like, did you have like a breaking point? Was there like a single moment in that experience where you're like, you know what? Bye. I'm done. Y'all can go take this little squirter and shove it up your ass. Like, how did that
Basically.
work out? Was it another night at the bar where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna call my boss.
No, I actually got into a really bad car accident.
Oh.
I was taking a month off of work to study for my MCAT, which is the entrance exam for medical school.
Mhm.
So it's like getting to the end. I was like, you know what? I was supposed to go to medical school. I've been here almost 2 years. What am I doing?
Mhm.
So I was going to go home, go take some time off and study for this big test and then take it. And on my way home from San Francisco, I get into this really bad car accident. Some kid was just driving like a jackass and ran almost directly into my car from like the far right lane all the way to the far left lane. I was driving a Jeep, small wheelbase, spun out. I hit the side of a semi truck, totaled my car, which I was pissed about. I walked away. I was mostly okay. Um, but I told my boss, I was like, hey, like, I know I was supposed to still come back for like a few more days and take care of things, but like, I can't drive. I drive a manual and my car's totaled and I just got in this huge accident. And she was like, okay, what am I supposed to do about that? The work needs to get done. And I was just like, oh, they really like don't care about the people. They care about the product, basically. Like what's coming out of this? What am I getting from you? Like if I'm paying you, and I was like, well, I can work from home. I can do the data analysis at home. And she was like, no, you need to come into the office. I was like, okay. That was kind of like
Wow.
the decline where I was like, you know what? I took my exam. I applied to medical schools, and I was like, I'm getting out of here. And even if I'm not getting out of here, I'm quitting this job.
Hell yeah. Holy shit. Pardon the joke, but that's a long way from community at Oakland where everybody actually cared. Like that's
Mhm.
okay. So I feel like healthcare workers are underpaid like teachers, if that makes sense. I feel like the people who get paid the big bucks growing stem cells. I don't know if it's big bucks, but I'm sure it wasn't a bad job by any means. I feel like they're overpaid. Sure, they are doing a lot, but they're here to help, and eventually down the line it will help, which I understand that the research is super important. But when you have people who have no common courtesy or care for another fellow man, like, I feel like that type of person belongs behind a computer analyzing not neuron data, like maybe analyzing data at the DMV. Like, I feel like that's that type of person that should be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you bounced out of there, you're back in medical school. What's your life looking like now? Like, still tons of hobbies, lots of studying. What's going on there?
Yeah. So I started medical school during the pandemic. Um, so when the pandemic hit, I had quit my job. I moved back to Sacramento. I was just working at REI at the time. I was playing outside all day, every day. Pretty much, it was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah.
Um, and then the pandemic happened. Everybody got laid off. Everything shut down. I packed up my Jeep 2 because the first one was totaled.
Part 2, yes.
And just went out to the desert and lived out there for a few months. So I actually found out I got into medical school while I was living in the desert. Hadn't showered in like weeks. Checked my email and I'm like, oh crap, I have to like go to medical school. But I actually wasn't sure. I was so happy. I was like every day it was like we were mountain biking, we were fly fishing, we were rock climbing, we were hiking. I was sleeping in a hammock. I got to read a book whenever I wanted. I was just like living this great life and I had so many adventures every single day. Um, and I was sitting there and I was like, I, I don't know if I can say yes to this. I was like, I know I've worked really hard for this, but like, I don't know, man. Went to one of our friends' houses who lived in that area that we knew, shook a magic 8 ball a few times, and it was like, oh, like go check again later. And I was like, not what I need right now. um, and my buddy flipped a coin for me. And the coin said, go to medical school. So I emailed back and said, I accept.
I fucking love that, dude. That's such so you're a decision maker, like I'm a decision maker. I love that. Yes.
Yep.
Oh, that's so cool. So, oh, by the way, for people who are listening to this podcast, because not everybody lives in California, van down by the river, Jeep in the desert is California's version. All right. So no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Like, I'm so glad you got to have that experience. Like, I believe everybody should have some similar experience like that. I mean, not everybody's built for the outdoors, but like that time in their life where they just have freedom of choice. Like,
Oh yeah.
in their adult life, because we all get that when we're kids, we always choose the dumb choice and we suffer for it later. Because I'm sure there were kids that made good choices when they were kids. I wasn't one of them.
Me either.
But to have the option to just have freedom as an adult, it's very rare. So I'm super stoked on you now. So you are in medical school. You are at REI still, or no?
No, they unfortunately did not love that I was so busy with medical school. Weren't really willing to work around my school schedule, so I ended up having to leave there, which was really sad. I probably would still be working there if they'd let me.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, and you're back here in Sacramento area, yeah? Like that's
Yes.
kind of where
Yeah.
you're located centrally. Yeah. Same.
Yeah. But the first year or 2 years, mostly was really tough. I went from having so much freedom and autonomy to like 8 hours of classes a day on Zoom.
That's what I was just about to ask you. How was that transition, dude? That's gnarly.
I probably cried mostly for the first like 4 months, and I was like, I made the worst decision. I never should have said yes. Why did I do this to myself? My friends were all sending me pictures like, we're out here still. And I was like, why? Don't tell me that.
You're the one that flipped the coin, you jerk.
Exactly. I'm like, and then you just stayed out there living your best life, and I have to go home and like be responsible.
I love it. So I mean, I can imagine like because those are polar opposites. And I can't imagine that sitting in front of a screen, as much as people were sitting in front of screens at that time, has any mental, emotional, or physical health health benefits. But I can imagine it's all negative. Do you have any opinions on that? Like when it comes to
It's so unhealthy for you. I think
yeah,
that method of learning in general is just like incredibly unhealthy. Nobody learns well sitting and stare. I think they've done studies where like after like max an hour, it's like no longer productive.
yeah, yeah,
And so, but we still continue to force it. We're like, oh, this is obviously the best way to learn. This is obviously the best way to do. And we still keep like trying to force like this square peg into a round hole.
yeah, dude. Well, okay, so you're no longer in COVID. You actually get to go into classes now. Like, what's that looking like? Like, was that again another transition that was pretty difficult, or was it like happy to be back in class?
I'm not a good sit and listen learner. I'm a doer, learner.
Yeah,
So that was really hard for me either way, sitting in a lecture, regardless if it's in person or if it's on Zoom, was still really brutal for me. I do
yeah,
much better of like, oh, let me read about this and then teach it to a friend or like try to understand it in my way versus like, oh, we're going to look at this slide. Oh, we're going to look at this slide and we're going to talk about it. And now on to the next class to do that.
yeah,
So it didn't work
yeah.
out super well for me. But now currently, we don't actually go to classes at all anymore. It's all just rotations in hospitals or clinics. So I'm like purely on like the patient side of it. So I don't do any more coursework. I just see patients.
Dude, that's so sick. And I'm not gonna, we don't have to say like what hospital you're at, but like, so you are in the emergency room. You are dealing with, or are you like, take 2 of these and call me in the morning? Like what
Yep. Yeah.
emergency room?
So yep,
Okay.
emergency
Yeah.
room. I spent the last few months in different emergency rooms over California.
Oh wow, dude. All over California. That's cool. So that's so rad. I want to know just personally, like, because I find this interesting. What emergency room is the most active you've been in? Like, what
Mm,
area? Because they're all active. Like, I know, but like some people come in with, I shot a firework and it burned my hand, and then there's like gnarly, you know.
yeah. I spent a month down in Stockton in their emergency department.
Oh, how are you? You
Sorry, I'm
picked the
dying.
no, it's okay. Yeah, you probably got it from Stockton. I'm not gonna lie. I'm
Probably
just gonna
got it
say.
from Stockton.
Yeah.
But every patient there was just like so incredibly sick. Like
Yeah.
most emergency departments, you've got a mix of you've got your traumas that come in on an ambulance and they've hit their head. It's like really bad. You've got the triage or the urgent care patients, I like to call them, the people who just come in and they're like, oh, I've got this cough, I've got a runny nose. And you're like, okay, well, it's not an emergency, but we'll help you regardless. And then you've got like some of the people who are like in the middle of that, like, oh, this is not quite urgent care, but it's not quite an emergency, and like the emergency department is the right place for you. But every single person down in Stockton had just like such a myriad of health problems. I mean, people who were in their 20s, 30s who were just so critically ill and they come in for something small, but you're like, you have 10 other problems that we also have to manage while you're here. And it's just like so crazy to me how everybody was so sick.
Probably something in the water. Not gonna lie. Um,
Yeah.
having said that, I've fished out of Stockton plenty of times. It's kind of
Yeah,
fun.
the Delta's a great region.
Dude, absolutely. Have you fished the Delta?
I have. Yeah.
Dude, where were like what were you throwing for that day? Because I know you're flying angler, you like trout, browns and stuff. So what were you going after striper?
I was going for bass.
Oh, nice.
I did actually teach at excuse me. I did teach at a Boy Scouts camp for a few summers. I taught their fly fishing merit badge, and they had a private bass lake, and so that was my first introduction to like bass fishing with like a fly rig.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, how? Okay. All right. Now I gotta these questions I gotta ask. So how is because for fly fishing for bass, you're either throwing like the streamers that go subsurface or you're throwing just flies that sit on top, right?
Poppers.
So
Yeah.
pop, you said poppers?
Yeah. So like, I mean, I don't know if that's like actually the technical term for it, but like they resemble frogs.
Yes.
So they sit on the top of the water, and you'll see the bass like come get them, and they'll like just suck it down, and you're like setting that line like, uh,
Barbless? Were you throwing barbless?
yeah.
Okay. So okay, so I don't know the weights very well when it comes to fly rods, but I know that my frog rod, because I love frog fishing, like this is if
Oh
I
yeah.
could frog fish, I've thought about trying to figure a way where I could fly around the world so I could be in a constant mode of summer so I could always fly fish for bass, or not fly fish, frog fish for bass.
It's just
So
the best.
yeah, but my rod is a broomstick. I use like 80-pound braid, and I have a
Yeah.
dual 5/0 hook frog. Like it is gnarly. So explain to me how you're doing this for you fly, I don't know how to, you cast out there and you get the frog on. They swallow it because yes, it looks like if you were inside a volcano upside down. It's exactly what it looks like. The water just
Yeah.
goes down. It's like a toilet
Yeah.
flush, boom, and it's gone. And then you have to like rip the line and set the rod. Like what size, what fly weight rod are you using? First off, what weight rod?
And 8 weight.
Got okay. And
Yeah.
then is it a 9 foot?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think like maybe like 9.5 or something, but yeah.
How do you keep them pinned? No barb. And like the reels they're like really hard to reel. So how are you? Like, I have an oversized handle on mine because I'm trying to horse them in, you know. So how are you peeling them fish in? Are you just reeling to hell or what? How does that work?
So I think you can do it a few different ways, but the way I do it is so when you set, you set and you've got your fly line in this hand. So you're holding your line as you're setting.
Yeah.
And so what I'll do is you kind of, sorry, not to flip you off.
No, you can flip me off
You're
all
like
day. Do it all the time.
you're like holding the rod, and then you're holding the line in front of the rod with like a finger.
Yeah.
I use my middle finger.
Mhm.
And so you're kind of like keeping that tension on it. So what I'll do is I'll strip the line in as I'm going. So rather than them like, with like typical like conventional, like when you see her going, they'll take off and the
Yes.
reel's going and they're taking line out. There's really I'm not having any of that. I'm stripping the line, and then they're going, and maybe I'll let a little bit of line out, but I'm kind of like controlling that like give and take a little bit better.
Oh my gosh. So okay. So with two hands, you're a bait caster, which is a type of reel. So because when I'm frog fishing, I set the hook and I'm holding them, and sometimes they're heavy. So there's a dial on there that I can leave to give them some drag. Always keep the rod pinned, but if you have to give them drag and you can't release that brake, there's a thumb button that you push, and then the spool spins under your thumb to give them a little bit of line before you start cranking it over and reeling it again. So you're peeling line with your reel hand or whatever, and you're pinching the line tight to the rod to keep the rod tension before you reach up and grab the line again. You're stripping more line that way.
Yep.
And you're pulling in fish. Dude,
Yeah.
that's so gnarly. That's so hands-on. Have
Oh
you
yeah.
ever like I'm sure it's happened because I lose them, and I got 2 5/0 hooks with barbs that are the size of some fly hooks. So what what's your success rate on the fly fishing just in general? Like, are you pretty good at cast to catch? Like,
For bass, I'd say I had like an 87% success rate. The only ones that I'm losing because I'm setting it too fast. I didn't wait long enough for it to like suck it all the way down.
yeah,
Um, it was just really easy to fly fish for bass. I think the biggest barrier for me for fly fishing is knowing exactly when I'm fishing for like trout, knowing which fly is working best. Sometimes I'll be out there all day and I'm not catching anything. And my buddy's over there like, I just caught 20. And I'm like using the same fly, standing same river. And I'm like, what the heck, man?
he's got one white hair on his or some shit. You know?
Yeah, yeah. It's just like something's different, you know? And I think that's why I like fly fishing a little bit more because I think to me, having done both conventional fishing is like it's almost so easy, like I know I'm gonna catch something. Oh, I can throw, some power bait in there. I know I'll catch something. A treble
Yeah,
hook,
yeah,
I'll catch something. It's like, it's not that bad,
yeah.
Whereas with like fly fishing, it's so like, did I pick the right fly? Did I present the fly in the right way? Did my line hit the water first and create this big splash? Am I stripping it correctly? Like, how's the fly presenting? It's just like there's so many different variables that it makes it so much more rewarding when you do catch a fish. You're like, I did that, you know, I'll catch the tiniest fish like these guys. And I'm just like, I can't believe I caught that fish.
Yeah, dude, that's like so hands-on. Like your body mechanics is actually what conventional tackle all does, like in a thing this big. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's so much more hands-on activity. That's so rad. Do you notice a
Yeah.
difference in like fish and how they eat? Like, say you catch one bass, one salmon, one trout, one, I don't know, pick your, fish. Do they all eat the fly differently? Or is it pretty much the same? Like they swallow it and then you wait a couple seconds and set the hook? Or how does that work?
Um, Definitely. I mean, bass will just like take the whole thing and go. Trout are a little bit more sensitive. You know, I lip them a lot more. But when I compare like trout to like steelhead, I know they're kind of basically the same thing. I lips more steelhead and more trout will swallow. But trout are kind of like a more middle ground. I feel like I'll lip a lot of them, but sometimes I'll be like, why did you eat the whole fly? Now I have to like rip it out of you, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I also hear you got to be like very delicate when you handle them. Is that
Mhm.
something that you learn from fly fishing, or is that something that is like general knowledge? Because I mean, I've seen them dumped out of airplanes into lakes, and they live just fine. But you drop
Yeah.
a bass, and like chances are that sucker is going to swim around with one eye for the rest of his life. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it kind of factors into like the movements like keep fish wet, keep them wet or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Um and I kind of think of it similarly to like leave no trace principles. Like it should be common knowledge, but it's kind of something that you need to be taught. And it's not really something you're taught unless it's something you're looking to be taught. Like you kind of have to be out there like looking for further guidance and further information or have like be lucky to have a really good mentor who's explaining it to you.
Yeah.
It's my understanding, especially for trout, is, if you go in and you take them out of the water, they're really sensitive. The longer you hold them out and you hold them up, take your photo, more likely that it is that they're gonna, not successfully return back into the water. If you have gloves on, that gloves will like remove some of the oil from their scales, which also makes it harder for buoyancy in swimming. And like there's all this like science and knowledge behind it that I'm no expert by any means, but
Yeah.
basically, the concept is have your hands, keep them wet, keep them in the water, take the photo in the water, let them go.
Sick. Yeah. It's honestly, as much as it's not done, it's very similar in bass fishing too. They have a slime coat on them that, protects them from bacteria and anything like that. And it's very important in the fall. And I know that trout and steelhead are heavy in the fall. Um, it's very important for fish to keep their slime coats because their body cannot rebuild that slime coat in the winter because they are too busy, like just trying to stay alive. Come spring, summer, it builds back a little bit better, but during the winter they can catch all types of bacteria because their body can't rebuild that slime coat. And so same thing with bass. If you catch them and you have a catch board, which is like a giant measuring stick, you put them on, you just dip it in the water wherever you're fishing and then put them on that, take your picture and put them right back in the water. It's literally like a couple minutes. And what I have, like I do a lot of kayak fishing. I got these clamps. I just clip it on their lip and put them back in the water and let them swim around until I got the board wet and my camera ready. And then I just pull them out and put them on there and then throw them right back in. Since he's saying, all right, mortality rate. I do pretty decent on my mortality rate. Every now and then I'll kill one, but I
The
don't want to
rarer it
eat
is, the
them.
better.
So I just, that is turtle food, you know?
I don't think anybody really wants to eat bass.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Oh man, you would be surprised. But no, so you're in Stockton. That was the most probably mind-altering experience in the emergency room. Sorry for that giant rabbit hole, but
That's
whatever.
okay. It's a great rabbit hole. I used to date this guy who I would tell him all the time, you have to handle your trout nicer. You've got to be like way more gentle and whatever. Throw him back in. He'd always be like, why are they always dying on me? As he's like chucking them into the water, ripping things out and throwing them. And I'm like, I don't know how many times I've told you, man, they're gentle fish. And then one day
I
he
just
comes
smacked
home.
it on a rock. Why
It's
is
like,
it
I don't
doing
know what
what?
you're talking about. And then one day he comes home and he's like, yeah, I met this guy who told me that you have to be really gentle with the fish. And so like now like I realize and I was just like,
Oh, that's relationship 101, girl. Like, I love
I was
this.
like, You're right. You just started fishing, and nothing I say has any merit to you or weight. It killed me. Oh my goodness.
I don't even think it has anything to do with fishing because I can tell you I have specific. I'm not going to give examples because I'm not going to bust her out, but I have very many specific examples of my wife telling me certain stuff, and I'm like, okay, okay. And then one other person, doesn't matter. It could be a stranger walking down the street. They say one thing, and then I come home and go, babe, did you know that? Da, 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 da. She's like, yeah. I mean, there's multiple examples of that in our life. It's relationship 101, and it goes
Oh
both ways
man.
because I'm, she's no saint, so it goes both ways. There's many times where I say something and she don't hear it, but then her friend says it and she hears it. Part of relationships. I don't know if it's like people tune each other's frequencies out over time or what it happens to be, but
I think there's just so much ego built into relationships, like you're like, oh yeah, yeah, sure, sure, yeah, you're like, I know what I'm doing, I don't need this advice, and then there's no ego with you and a stranger or you and like some other dude you're fishing with. You're just like stoked to be out there together.
I'm not going to say that that's untrue. That actually makes a lot of sense. Like having that ego in the relationship. Cause I mean, okay, both parties have a specific amount of ego. It's not girls, not just girls, not just guys. And ego looks different. But when you're in a relationship, you feel like you're bringing something to the table. Everybody does bring something to the table, but you feel like you have, you're giving yourself to this person and, they are giving themselves to you. Like it's part of the normal relationship, but you are who you are and they are who they are. So my wife might stand on a hill like this is who I am and this is what I do, and I stand on my hill saying this is who I am and this is what I do. And that's like ego, so we don't necessarily hear the change that we need to give. Would that make sense? This is my theory that I'm coming up with right now as we talk. Because
Yeah, I mean,
you said ego, that was like, dude, that is true. That is
yeah.
true.
I mean, I think it takes so much work to set aside your ego. Like even me, I'm not quite a doctor just yet, but I've been sick for a week, and everybody's like, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" And I'm like, "I know more than you. Don't talk to me." Um, and I think it's really hard to set our egos aside and like really hear people for what they're telling us. Even if their advice is wrong advice, even if I do know more than them, to even just set our ego aside and like actively listen and actively hear somebody and say, maybe what you're telling me is that you're just concerned for me. And I just need to hear that concern rather than focusing on my ego of I know more than you.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I'm going to apply some of that. I like what we're talking about right now because by no means am I like the picture perfect husband. I try my best and I fail often. So I'm definitely going to start looking at some of this stuff in my own life because I do a lot of writing as it is. I'm not a reader writer, but there is requirements for me to stay alive, and part of it is writing. So I say that like super gross. Part of me to stay healthy as a human being is I need to write down stuff that I'm not doing right. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Introspection. Honestly, nobody's perfect, right? We all make mistakes. We all fuck up. I
Oh
think the
yeah.
biggest thing is just like taking that in and saying, you know what? I didn't handle that situation well. Why did I not handle that well? And the biggest thing I always say, when we fight with our partners, with our family, with our friends, you see anger as like this primary emotion, but it's really kind of a secondary emotion. There's always something under that anger. When you yell at your kid for running into the street, you're not angry, you're fearful. When you get into a fight with your wife because she didn't do the dishes or you didn't do the dishes, it's not anger that's the primary emotion, it's frustration. It's not feeling seen, heard, loved, appreciated. So
Yes.
it's really just taking the time to like look inwards and see what that emotion that's driving you is.
Dude,
The
I
more you
love that.
understand yourself and your own emotions, the more you can understand how you're interacting with yourself and the world around you.
Oh yeah. Totally. I was literally talking to my buddy the other day because he was like super stressed out about his job and super stressed out about all this stuff. And I was like, hey man, do you love your job? Or are you there for a check? He's like, I'm there for a check. Okay. Do you see yourself growing with the company and hopefully getting promotions sooner or later? Then why are you emotionally involved in this? And then what it came down to, from my perspective, and he can correct me on this later if he wants, but from my perspective, it came down to personal accountability for yourself and exactly how being the best employee you could possibly be. And if the situation is falling apart around you. It has literally nothing to do with you, but yet you're sitting there internalizing it. It has everything to do with like your self-appraisal.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, fuck this place, fuck that job. Yeah, mad. You know, I'm like, yeah. I mean, we could really go into this for a little bit. But I need to not, because what will end up happening is we'll be here and 3 hours will go by and you'll be like, holy shit, dude, I gotta go to bed. So, and I know you have actual important school to do in the morning. Like I got to do some work. I swing a hammer. There's no like, I swing a hammer for a reason. I don't need to use my brain that much. So, but you do. So I'm not going to keep you too long, but I do have a list of questions for you if you don't mind going over them with me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's
All
get to
right, cool.
it.
Oh, and I got a text message. Sorry, I'm a little out of sorts today. Everybody, I'm super out of sorts. I'm just having it's a day today for sure.
I mean,
Okay, first question. And you can elaborate on all these. It doesn't have to be a one-word answer. It's not a yes, no thing. Spend a day with anyone on the planet at any given time. You could use a time machine. You could do what you want. You could revive the dead. A whole day with anyone. Who would it be? And
my
why?
grandpa. Um, my grandpa recently passed back in February. It was very sudden. I ended up moving in with him and my grandma back when he started to get really sick.
Yeah.
And it was just like it was sudden but expected and unexpected all at once. He'd had cancer for a long time, but he'd been going through treatment and we thought that the cancer was under control. And then the chemo regimen that he was on burned out his pancreas and he developed type 1 diabetes.
Oh no.
And so he was actually like really struggling to care for himself. So I moved in. I was like, you know what? I can juggle, school and caring for you. This will be no big deal. It's not that bad. It was actually a lot worse than I expected. And shortly after I moved in, had to take him to the hospital where prognosis wasn't looking good. And he did end up passing back in February.
I'm really sorry. That's terrible.
It was very hard to manage I was on more of a caregiver's standpoint, like I was a lot of the liaison between the doctors and my family. I was receiving the calls from like the palliative care doctors and like sitting with my family down and leading the discussions, which was a very unique experience and almost like alienating from my family experience for me, just because, you're not like a family member at that point. You're a team leader, a caregiver.
Yeah.
But my grandpa was one of my biggest supporters, believed in me, supported me, helped raise me. I love him so much. And I think probably something I will work through for many years to come. He always pushed me to be selfish. I have a very hard time being selfish. I want to be there for others. I want to support my friends, my family, whatever. And he would always push me, like, you need to focus on yourself first. You need to focus on school, focus on your career, do what you need to do. We'll always be here. And I almost took that for granted. I'd say, oh, I can't see you this weekend, Grandpa. I can't have lunch with you because I got to do this. I got to do that. I'm really sorry. And, always understood, always supported me, said, absolutely, like take care of all that first. Succeed is number one. And so I'd love to just go back and spend another day with him.
Your grandpa sounds like a really dope dude, because there's very few people that will actually tell you that you need to be selfish ever. So that's something special. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
He's probably the only person in my life who's ever actually. There's been a few others, but for the most part, everybody else,
But it sounds like he sounds like he really knew you, like really knew your core. If he's telling you that you have to be selfish, like that's
absolutely.
awesome. That's so good. That's so good. And then I can imagine, like you said, being a caregiver, like you probably were half mentally at work at the same time, so like emotionally checked out. And then, like you said, you're completely isolated from your family because they expect all these things from you. Like it's a very lonely place to be. So I'm really sorry. I'm extremely sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry that you had to go through it the way you did. But
Yeah.
Grandpa,
I'm so lucky I got the years I did with him. I'm so grateful I was able to be there for him through the end. I provided a different level of knowledge and expertise towards my family in this situation that I'm really grateful for. Um, and it taught me a lot, like now when I see patients of my own, when I see their family members, I have a different perspective and how I can work with them, treat them, care for them. That I think helps make me a better physician and person. So,
yeah,
try to look at it as like this really shitty thing happened and it's devastating and I'll deal with the guilt and the sadness for years to come. But at the same time, a lot of good came out of it.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, biggest fear. Like I okay. Before we get to this, I just really want to say that I appreciate you coming on here because you are like when I ask guys what their biggest fear is, a lot of the times, like I mean, you get really good answers, but also you get like spiders. Next question. You're like,
Well, dang
okay.
it, that was my answer.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. Biggest fear though. I
I
don't like spiders either. That's why I chose it. So.
actually think they're really cute. I used to have this spider that lived in my shower, and I named him Paul, and make sure he
Paul?
didn't drown. Yeah, he was just my little guy. He made sure there were no other bugs in there to bother me.
Tell me he was a daddy long legs, like the acceptable
Nope,
spider.
he was like a creepy looking white spider. Never seen one before, but he was nice. He was friendly. Let me pick him up a few times, move
No. Yep.
him.
You lost me there.
But anyways, off of that tangent, biggest fear. Wow. I generally don't think of myself as a very fearful person. I've got a lot of small fears. Like I was scared of heights. I learned to rock climb. I was scared of drowning, so I learned to scuba dive. I try to take every fear as an opportunity for growth, which just sounds really like I'm better than you and annoying kind of. But
Dude, that's awesome.
I think if I was gonna pinpoint a biggest fear, I think it would be not feeling like I was living or had lived, you know? Like I'm afraid of getting stuck in like a survival mode and I'm just existing and I'm doing the day-to-day grind and I'm getting through and I'm not looking at the journey as a journey. I'm looking at it as this slog that I have to make my way through. And all of a sudden I'm at the end. And what did I spend the last 20 years doing? Was I happy? Did I live my life? Did I laugh with my friends and my family? Did I go on adventures? Like, I think that's what I worry about. That 20 years will go by and I'll say, what the hell did I do with my life?
That is the best answer I think I've ever heard. Like, holy cow. I don't even know where to go with that because I mean, you talked about having fear and then conquering it, having like a tangible fear and then conquering it, and then you went full other direction about when I describe my life. I'm describing exactly what you're talking about, but not the good part. Like I'm talking like I'm a terrible describer of my life because I will sit there and talk about how I've been stuck in the same spot for so long, and it's literally of my own making, of my own doing. But I'm so happy there
Mhm.
because I was always seeking that next adventure for so long, and then finally I found the small things that make me happy being in that life now. But now I'm afraid that I'm happy in that life. You're making me afraid that I'm happy in that life. That's such an awesome. I'm going to be doing a lot of thinking after this show. I'm not going to lie. This is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So
I
this
mean, I
question.
think that oh, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna
No,
say
no.
that ties a lot into what I said earlier about how, you know, I don't look at it as escaping from one thing to the next. I really try to enjoy everything about my life. Like even when I come home and I complain, I'm like, oh, this patient did this, and I just spent 4 extra hours at work. Secretly inside, I'm like, I love it. I have the opportunity that I can spend 4 extra hours at work and see all those patients and do all these cool things and still go home and complain to somebody who cares to listen. Um,
There is a difference between like complaining and just like letting it out. Like it seems to me that like you said, you absolutely love what you're doing. So when you're coming home and complaining, I wouldn't necessarily call that complaining. I would say that more about like, this is just releasing your day on somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Debriefing. Yeah.
yeah. Debriefing. Perfect.
Yeah.
Debriefing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, and you have a significant other at home?
I do not. No. My parents are very lovely. They let me move back in when I said, "Hey, I'm poor, and
Nice.
I'm going to
So
be
you
moving
debrief them.
around for the next few months." Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
bother them all the time.
are they your sounding board? Do you have like a good group of friends where you can like vent and like chat with and like kind of,
Oh yeah, I have
yeah,
great friends, great family. I've such a truly amazing support system. I'm so lucky to have them all, and they're all so lovely.
that's so awesome. Yeah. See, I'm gonna tell my wife that's debriefing. I'm not coming home and complaining. I'm debriefing with my day because it sounds like I come home and complain a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just like I come home and I'm like, I feel irritated, and then I start letting it out, and I'm like, you know what? I felt irritated, but now that I'm talking about it, I'm actually kind of excited to be talking about it and just telling you about this. And I don't know if I was so much irritated as just like whatever else was going on in that moment. Like, oh, I was short on time and this question irritated me. So now I'm irritated at the situation. But really, as I'm debriefing it, complaining about it, I'm like, wow, this was a really interesting thing that happened about my day. Obviously, enough for me to highlight it to you.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I don't
You know, if you don't mind, can we talk more? Because I like the way you talk,
know.
and like this is I'm stoked. Sorry.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
We'll
Okay.
grab
So
beers and go fishing one of these days.
hell yeah, I'm down. I'll give you a bait caster, and you can blow up that reel, and you can watch me just sling a fly 90 feet into a tree, and we'll,
Perfect.
we'll have a
I
good
love
time.
laughing.
Yeah. So this next question kind of applies, kind of doesn't, but it's a question that I always ask. Like, has there ever been a time where you've been broke because of fishing? Well, we're gonna rephrase this for you. Has there ever been a time that have missed like an electric bill because you were financially dove 100 into this hobby? Because I'm an all or nothing guy, so I understand diving in 100%.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's hear it.
I love gear. I love spending money on gear. I actually should all right, this is gonna be a very convoluted answer. Working at REI, I had access to all these discounts. So I bought so much gear to the point where my parents are actually pissed because I have a whole extra room of the house dedicated to all my gear. They can't stand it. They think I have too much and I keep buying more. I'm like, but I need these pink ski boots because they have the new BOA system and it's really cool. And they're like, you have 4 ski boots. You don't need any more. And I'm like, but I do.
But these have
So
boa. You don't have
yeah,
to
right.
waste them.
It's like I'll maybe get rid of another pair eventually. um, I actually just had these guys who came into town. They hit me up on Facebook Marketplace. I was finally selling a piece of gear, and they were from Chile, coming here to Yosemite to do some highlighting. And I met up with them and we chatted, and they're like, "You don't happen to have any other gear, do you?" And I was like, "Ooh, you came to the right person." Came to my
Yeah.
house. They spent like an hour and a half digging through all my gear. They're like, "You have more? You have more? And you'll sell it?" I'm like, "Well, I've got 4 of them. I guess why not?" uh,
REI 2.5. That's sick.
yeah, yeah. So yes, I'm frequently very poor all the time because I always spend my money on things that I'm like, "Oh, I haven't looked at my bank account in a while," and they're like, "You have $10 left." And I'm like, "That's rough."
I love it. Okay. I can relate 100%. If I worked at a tackle shop, I would not have a check. That's exactly what would
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
REI, actually, the one I worked at, they said that I pro dealed the most out of anybody. Basically, like 100% of my paychecks went straight back into REI because I was like, I'll buy things, more things.
Oh, they loved you. They loved you.
They actually didn't love me there. I like to go outside too much. And despite the motto of life outdoors is a life well lived, they actually just want you to work.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You're like, who wants to do that? No,
Yeah.
no.
Like,
Did you
no.
know I lived in a Jeep in the desert?
Yeah.
Like, I
I'm
don't
like,
need this
plus,
place.
like if a customer comes in, they don't want to talk to somebody who's going to look up the details on their phone of like what this product is. They want somebody who says, I've used this, I've lived it, I wore this into the ground, and I can tell you it's great, or this one sucks. Don't buy that.
Dude, exactly. We need more people like you in the sales industry. Too bad you're getting into medical. I'm just kidding.
Well, hey, you know what? I would not mind juggling a medical career and working at REI.
You're all, I work here, but I moonlight in the emergency room, just to let you know. So
Yeah, my primary career is the outdoors.
if all this goes bad, I'll see you again real soon. I promise.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome. Okay, so all right, let's hit it. I call them life hammers. It's a major life accomplishment. What's your major life accomplishment so far?
It's gonna be a very vague, again, kind of like douchier, better than you kind of answer, but choosing to be happy. Like we talked about in the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah.
I had so much anger and everything. I was just always so angry and upset about something, sad, whatever, as a kid. Um, and I think it's really easy to get trapped in a very negative mindset and get trapped in the woes of the day to day, the life, the things that aren't going well. Um, and so it's like almost like every day or every moment when I choose to be happy, like the other day I get up to go to work, I'm running late, I forget to do this, and as I'm going out the door, my backpack catches on the door handle and I spill something, and I'm like, everything just went wrong in that moment. And you're like, what a shit start to the day. I'm so unhappy. And now I'm going to be driving with aggressive music 10 miles over the speed limit. And that shapes your whole day. And sometimes it can shape your whole week. And I really try to sit back in those moments and say, you know what? I'm going to a place where I'm really excited to be. Like, yeah, this moment sucked, but that's not going to shape the rest of my day. That's not going to shape the rest of my week. And I'm going to choose to just be happy and be stoked about things in general and just kind of put that to the back burner because it's so inconsequential in the grand scheme of
Dude,
things.
so I'm sorry. Okay. This is awesome because okay, so many points, but let's narrow it down to two. All right. Sorry, I have the ADHD, so I got 80 of the
You got
HD.
80 of them?
Yeah, I got 80 of them bitches, right? So so we're gonna start with anger because I grew up very angry as well. I wasn't raised angry, I just was angry. And I feel like anger, well, I can tell you from my experience, there are two emotions that are romantic in my personal psyche and in the psyche of others, explaining this to other people and they fully backing me on this. There's a romance to love. There's a huge overcoming feeling when it comes to love. There's also a romance with anger because of how effective it is to your entire body, both emotionally and physically. That your body almost like I have a craving thing in my brain. So like I crave dopamines and I crave like all sorts of different I crave. I'm a more person. And so love, I feel heavily. Anger, I also feel heavily. And when I get a dose of either, my body romances that emotion where, like you said, it could be a bad moment. It's just one bad moment. I spilled coffee in my truck. That's like, big no-no in my truck. But I spilled coffee in my truck, and now my entire day I am listening to 3 inches of blood flying down the freeway, and everybody gonna catch a piece of this today for sure. Like I just want it, my body wants to keep producing that like almost small dose of adrenaline, right?
Yep.
And so, and same thing with love. Like when I'm like, discussing like having a very good conversation with my wife or like whatever, like I just want it to keep going. And like I'm trying to, and like I end up over talking and like really making her mad because I want to keep that moment forever, so I feel like both of those, like you will physically and mentally like romance in your head, and like you can hold on to anger and you can hold on to love, like at the same level inside. That is a very layman's way of explaining it. I'm not by no means a
Absolutely.
learned man.
It's so easy to just like give in to that like anger.
It
And
is.
that's what I'm getting into, like you can choose to give into it, or you can choose to just say, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna be happy regardless, and I'm gonna be stoked about everything else that's going on.
And I love that you say like that was my next point, is that you choose. You actually take that moment, that pause, and you choose like, nah, I'd rather just be happy. I'd rather, and it's almost like you've been explaining this whole time, like you are just choosing to go to the next adventure. Like you are choosing to live life as it comes at you. And that is awesome. Like I love that. Dude, that's so sick. I'm sorry. I will keep rabbit holing on all these things. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. That is a life hammer to the fullest. Have you ever had, I'm a terrible typer and I'm reading it, so
Okay.
you're gonna have to
Take your
suffer
time.
through this just like everybody else. Have you ever had a lesson that you've learned on the water that you've implemented in your life? Or have you ever had a lesson that you've learned in your life that you've learned how to implement on the water? And like I give people examples like patience, but like patience is pretty typical.
I would have said patience if you didn't steal it, my thunder. You know, and I think it's going to tie into pretty much everything I've said, just like really enjoying the moment. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to get caught up in whatever you're doing in your day to day life, even fishing. You get so caught up in the fishing that, like, do you sit back and enjoy it? Are you actually enjoying the moment you're in, or is the moment just there and you're there with it? You know,
Yes.
I've had so many people that I've gone fishing with where they're like, we don't stop, we don't take breaks, we fish, we fish, we fish. And I'm like, you know, sometimes I just want to sit here and look around me and say, wow, did you look at all the bugs on the water? Look at that plant. I've never seen that plant before. Did you see those birds like calling over there? Like, can you believe this? Like, look at this world we're living in. Look at this moment we're in. And like, just take stock of it and really just be appreciative that you're here. Whatever in your life it brought you to this moment. And, I get to sit here with my friend and drink a beer and sit on our kayaks and just be a part of this moment rather than watch the moment go by because I'm too focused on, getting the action done.
Dude, I love that. That's awesome. That is a yes, 1000%. So I'm a driver, but I've learned over time to do exactly that, and I love that. That is some of my favorite times is to like sit back and watch my buddy fish.
Yeah.
Even if I'm catching more than him and like I don't want to get off the school, like I will back off and just kind of watch him go for a little bit because sometimes it's just seeing somebody else even enjoy what
Yeah.
you're enjoying. Like that's just it's a beautiful
Yeah.
moment. I love it. And if
I get
he's probably gonna listen to this and he's gonna call me and tell me that I'm like gay or some shit. But
whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like I love teaching. I love teaching people to fly fish. I love teaching people to ski, rock climb, whatever. And I think it's because you get to experience like that love you have for the thing so freshly. Like watching somebody get their first like ski turn in after spending a whole day falling on the like bunny slopes, and they're so excited, and you can see that excitement, you can see this love growing for that sport, and you're like, I helped them get that, like I gave them my love, and now they've got their own love, and like that's just so awesome to see and watch.
Dude, that's so cool. So I'm gonna say this. I'm just gonna be totally 100% honest with you. I totally thought that this was all gonna go a totally different direction. Like I had a total preconceived notion of how we were gonna sit down and talk, and like I am sitting back, just eating crow. Like this is amazing. Like this is so rad. So thank you for agreeing to do this. I appreciate you, by the way. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, I'm happy
I
to.
didn't.
Sorry I spent half the time coughing to your viewers or
No, I'm not even gonna edit that out. We're gonna leave that in, and it's gonna
oh
be
no.
super fun because then everybody's gonna be like, "What the hell?"
Maybe edit like a couple of the really aggressive ones out.
No. If I did, you know, I didn't even put an ad in here yet. I'll do it at the end. But I'm not gonna edit out any of the coughs. I'll edit out one cough and I'll put an ad in there. How's that sound?
Perfect,
We'll call
perfect.
it. Yeah, there we go. We'll do that. And then okay, so you're like the perfect person to ask this question too. Biggest mental or emotional block for you?
Oh gosh, I have so many.
What's the biggest?
I think feeling like I'm never doing enough. I think that's my biggest emotional block. All the times I've said I to choose happiness, to choose to enjoy the moment. The biggest block that I come across to actually achieving those things is the feelings of just not doing enough or doing good enough. Like Could I have done a better job and saved that patient? Could I have done more for my grandpa? Could I have gotten a better grade on that test? Could I have caught more fish? Whatever it is, just that, like I worked 12 hours today and I got off at 6 a.m. And why did I sit on the couch and watch TV until I fell asleep instead of going to the gym? Just like those feelings, I think, are such a block to finding that happiness, finding that enjoyment of everything else going on. And that's just something that I deal with.
That's awesome. I don't always choose happiness. I'm not very good at that. I'm usually good at like just our mutual friend would tell me that I'm very unhealthy in this mentality, but I will just say fuck it and just roll. Like whether I'm mad or not, I'm not gonna I've learned to not be mad all the time, but I don't choose the happiness. What I choose to do is like I can just leave that there. That's gonna stay there and I just gotta get going and fuck it. Like
Mhm.
coffee will be in my truck forever. Fuck it. That's just but I like the choose. I like the idea of choosing to be happy. Like that's fucking so sick.
Yeah. And I'm by no means a perfect person. I let my anger get the best of me. Some days I'm like, God, man, I was such a bitch today. Why was I like that? And I realized I chose my anger. It felt good in that moment. I felt justified. And I was like, you know what? I am angry today.
Right. And okay. So I've been told that righteous anger is acceptable, but I've also been told that I'm not the type of personality that's allowed to have righteous anger because I will ride that motherfucker. So
Yeah.
but I mean, the fact that you can acknowledge that, the fact that you go, man, I was a bitch today. Like that's fucking cool. Like I don't acknowledge it. I just go, yep, that's what you got today. See you tomorrow.
Bummer.
Bummer for you, dude. Like so. Yeah, that's rad. Okay. If we're defined by something we love, tell me about someone or something that you love.
Mm. I think that's a tough one. I think I genuinely love so deeply. I've been going through interviews for residency over the last month. I've got so many more ahead of me, thankfully. And they ask you, like, why, they ask everybody, like, why are you here? And, everybody's application looks the same. They've volunteered, they've been in leadership positions, they've done X, Y, Z. Everybody looks great on paper. And I think the one thing that I say over and over is that I truly love what I do. I don't go teach the Boy Scouts because that's a thing to check off. It's a thing to do. Like when I'm there, I love teaching those kids. I love doing that. I love I love the ER. I love being there, even the patients that I complain about. I love every second of it. My grandpa, I loved him so deeply. I still love him, obviously. I think I just have such a deep, endless well for love that I try to give it out to everything I do, all the people in my life. Um, just everything. I don't know.
That's
Maybe not
awesome.
the answer you were looking for.
That dude, every answer that you have given has never been something that's been said. So I appreciate it. Like that is awesome. I don't even know. I have no comment on that. That is fucking you're rad. That's awesome. Okay, we're moving. I'm rarely am I speechless, as you can tell. Like I can always find something to say. So that's really cool. Okay. 3 departments. It's gonna be all under health. We're gonna talk about hydration, diet, and what do you do for hydration? What do you do for diet? And what do you do for mental clarity?
Ooh, I would say my diet needs to be worked on.
I do.
Being in the emergency department, we don't get lunch breaks. And so I frequently the only thing I'll consume in a 12-hour shift will be a rock star and some saltine crackers. Uh,
Not even like a slice of pizza. I seen your guys' break rooms before. I've been wheeled by. Like I know y'all got
those
stuff.
are the nurses' break rooms.
Oh,
We don't have like emergency department break rooms, or at least for the physicians. So, yeah, not the best of my diet. And then when I do eat, sometimes it's like, I guess I'll get McDonald's on the way home and stuff my face. Get a McChicken or 4 and some fries.
So keep it light all day and then just load up right before you go to bed, like just
and then
dump it.
pass out.
Yeah, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. That's awesome.
My friends make fun of me because sometimes I'll be like, wow, I haven't eaten today. And I'll go in my backpack and I'm like, I don't know how long this yogurt's been here, but I'm going to eat it. I'm like, you know what? Got to eat what you can.
I'm just building immunities, man.
Yeah, I'm just making myself stronger as I'm here sick for a week and a half. But yeah, diet, not great. I would recommend not doing what I do. Eat a balanced diet, eat healthy. For water, I actually have a friend who sends me almost daily reminders to drink water because I sometimes forget.
That's awesome.
But when I do drink water, I'll drink like 2 liters in a day. It's just if I have remembered to sit down and drink water or not.
Yeah. That's awesome.
2 things I'm not good at, taking care of myself. But for mental clarity, I think it comes fairly easy to me. I think I have a pretty good ability to like step back from situations and kind of view it as like a third party. Like I have a really good ability to look at other people's points of view and like motivations for why they might have done something that hurt me, why I might have done something. I think I'm just really good at like analyzing a lot of those things, which has helped me out. And just getting that mental clarity. Even when I'm angry, I'll just like take a step back from the situation. Even through my anger, I can kind of like see why I'm angry, why the other person in the situation might be acting the way they're acting. Which is almost more frustrating for me because I'm like, yeah, you did something really mean, and I get why you did it. And that bothers me because I can empathize, but it still makes me mad. And I know why I'm mad because of this childhood wound or whatever that it's really messing with. But I'm still mad.
I love that you're so honest about that. Like that's that next level vulnerability. I love that. Like, and I know because in my mind I remember this and it brings back this emotional. Like, yes, I'm 100% there. I love it. I love it.
Oh, yeah. My ex used to hate it because he'd be like, well, let me explain why I did this. I'm like, I don't need you to explain. I understand why you did it. He's like, but I haven't explained it. I'm like, I don't even need you to explain it. It already makes sense to me. But I don't want to hear it because I'm still gonna be mad. Like, just
You can explain it.
apologize.
Yeah, you can explain it. Just write it in a text. I'll read it tomorrow. Just say
like,
sorry now and just write it down. I'll read it tomorrow.
Yeah, you don't need to explain it right in this moment. It would kill them. It's like the biggest source of our fights. He'd always just be like, "Well, I need my side to be heard." I'm like, I don't need to hear it. I already empathize with you, but the anger's still there.
Then you just say sorry. I don't know. Sorry. Just every time you hear your middle name, I'm sorry. What happened? What did I do?
That's me.
Yeah. Hi. I'm sorry. So okay. One last thing I'm going to ask of you. If you could give advice for everyone for like a positive mental attitude, as long as you need to take the statement, give us a statement.
I think it's a tough one. I think everybody has so many different experiences and so many different views of the world, of their own psyche. It makes it hard to do like one blanket statement. But I guess just for like a positive outlook, positive life outlook, I would say, just everything's a choice. That sadness that you choose to sit in is a choice. you know, every day you make choices of how your day is going to go. And every day you deal with the consequences of those choices. And sometimes it's okay to choose the thing where the consequences you're happy. That's all I
Love
got.
it. No, I love it. I think that's super profound because that's not negating. That's not saying that your feelings are invalid. It's saying like once you feel those feelings, assess it, and like you can choose to sit in that and push that further or choose to be happy.
Absolutely. And everything is like, like when I'm sad, I could choose to sit here and be sad and write it out, or choose to go off to the mountains and dick around for a day and feel better because I was outside away from my problems. I can also choose to call my friend and say, hey, do you want to come over and be sad with me and drink wine and watch movies? Like everything has a choice, everything has an action and a consequence, and every choice can have such like a beautiful response.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Okay, I have a buddy. His name's Zach, and he came on here, and we were talking, and he was saying that that's a choice. You can choose to feel that way, and I'm like, I wasn't hearing what he was saying, and like you have elaborated on it so beautifully that now after this, I mean, he's asleep right now because it's like midnight where he's at, but I have to call him tomorrow and apologize for telling him that he's full of shit because you elaborated on it in such a good way that like I heard it and I appreciate it. And like back to our relationship example, because me and Zach talk all the time, and he said it and I didn't hear it, and then you said it, and it makes a lot more sense. So,
and maybe that's the point. Maybe somebody just has to say it in a different way for it to get through. Like, because I don't necessarily agree with that you choose to be sad. Like obviously there are people who deal with clinical depression.
Right.
They have those disruption in their hormones and their neurotransmitters, but it's more of what you choose to do with that sadness.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now we need some information. How can people find you or get a hold of you if they want to find you or get a hold of you?
Oh man, I am on Instagram. What is my Instagram? It is Brophus, BROPHUSS. I can send this to you too. I don't know if you link it.
Yeah,
or
I'm
something.
gonna follow you after this for sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I guess that would be the best way. I will warn everybody though, I am really bad with my phone and responding to notifications. Sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes it takes a few weeks. But I do try to eventually get back.
Yeah. Well, you have a very busy life, as has perfectly explained to us. And by no means am I going to be like expecting you to DM back or anything like that, or but I will send you fish pics because I like
Perfect.
that.
I love it. I love being jealous of people on a daily basis.
I'm just gonna start doing what your friends did. We're all out here partying.
Genuinely, like it used to bug me, and then one day I was like, you know what? I love it. This is what I get to look forward to. Like my friend just sent me a selfie from the top of a mountain. That's awesome. What did you climb? Where did you climb it? Like I don't know. I just get so stoked. I'll be at work and I'll be like, everybody send me pictures of what you're doing. Like I see your location. I know you're out partying. Let me see what you're doing. I want to know.
So awesome. Like some country western bar just got boots on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. And that's where we can all find you.
Yep.
And you might get some people hitting you up. It's happened before.
Fine with me.
Yeah, and I've said this before because I'll put it out there like, hey, dude, hit us up if you have questions or are interested in any of the topics that we've been discussing, like for further elaboration, by all means.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to chat about stuff. I love yapping. Dude,
same. I'm a yappy person. So again, Sam, thank you for coming on. Like, I really appreciate you. I'm gonna kick you out, but you're just going to the green room, so you're just gonna sit in the back room for a second, and then you can just cough it up. Like
perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I don't know how much I contributed to your podcast, but I love talking, and it was great to talk to you.
You contributed greatly, so thank you. And again, I appreciate you, and thank you for coming on the show.
Anytime.
And I kick you out like that. And then it goes back to me just sitting here, and I'm supposed to say something really profound or something cool. I don't know how people never know how to end these things. Like I never know how to, say stuff, but thank you again, Sam, for coming on, and thank you guys for listening. And I really appreciate you guys that have been reaching out, and I look forward to talking to you guys more. If you guys have any questions or anything that we've discussed tonight, feel free to hit me up, hit Sam up. And thank you for listening again to another episode of The Whole Angler. And with that, I will do this.
What's up, everybody? Wolf from Walmart. We're back. We're back, baby, again.
Not a bad fish right there, guys. Oh, no.
Out here catching Folsom bass right now, dude. Woo, he's a little chunker.
What up, dudes and dudettes? I'm sure you're tired of hearing my voice by now, but you're gonna hear it for a little bit longer because this is a shout out to the sponsor of this show, Kayak City. Kayak City has been taking care of me ever since I started getting into a boat and paddling around in the water trying to catch some fish. And when I tell you it is Kayak City, it is literally like a city of kayaks. They have Bonafide, Eddy Line, Feel Free, Hobie, Jackson, Native, New Canoe, Old Town, Wilderness Systems, and so many used kayaks. I stopped trying to count them a long time ago. If you guys are looking for accessories, they have walls and walls and walls of accessories. They have one wall dedicated specifically to Yak Attack, and it is a massive wall. Kayak City is your #1 Yak Attack dealer here in Northern California. If you want to know where it is, stop by at 7812 Auburn Boulevard, Citrus Heights, CA. Roll through, say what up to James, Troy, Eric, Scott. Tell them Dave says what's up and tell them I sent you there. Thanks for listening.